What's up, YouTube? As a fellow Mustanger, I wanted to do a super cheap swap on my SN95, and I wanted to do it on a relatively low budget. So today I'm going to go over with you my 4-valve swap, what wires I extended, what I kept, and how much this build basically cost. I'll also go over a few other things that I did personally that you don't have to do. But in searching and trying to do this swap on my own, there's very limited information. There are videos out there that will tell you, oh, we should cut this wire, but it doesn't show you how long you need to extend it. It doesn't show you all of that stuff. So we're gonna go in that today. And we'll also get into another couple of Mustangs that I have. And my goal with this channel is to help people when they want to do a 4-valve swap into an SN95, one that's already got a 4.6 in it or a 5.0, and then also kind of mechanically help people with Mustangs. Being a former automotive technician myself for 15 years, hopefully some of the information that I will have for you will help you out drastically in what you're searching for. I know that the information that I share in this video will hopefully help somebody more than I got help on it. I mean, obviously some of the stuff is sticking out, but I'll show that not everybody shows you what to swap, what you can reuse, what you can't use. And then also I'll get into my 2.3 turbo because I am part of that community, and that is extremely fun. But this 4-valve swap is a blast. So let's get into it. Okay, so this is my 1996 Mustang GT. Yes, it's extremely dirty. It never rains out here in Arizona. However, it has rained recently, and I gotta take it to the car wash, so I'll probably do that today. Front bumper obviously is a little scratched up, and my aero motives, is it aerodynamic? Front bumper splitter. It's Magic Drift, that's what it is. Magic Drift Aerodynamics, that's where I got that splitter. But you can tell it's kind of sagging. I got to put some 3M tape on it to hold it. But my bumper's a little scratched up. The previous owner used this car in SCCA, but it had the stock 4.6 in it. I had some different wheels on it, but I decided to put the 96 Cobras on it. And then I do have a carbon fiber spoiler on the back of it. Car's fairly clean. Car cost me about 2,300 bucks. It's got SLP, catback exhaust. There are no cats on this car. But let's get into the engine swap and what I did and what I've changed. I'll do a cold start for you guys, and then a couple revs. Maybe we'll take it for a drive later on, maybe when I go to the car wash, and then we'll get into my Capri. All right, let's go. Okay, and here is my engine. So for me, I went with a Mark 8 engine. They are a little bit more readily available. This is the 98 LSC version, so this one does have a little bit more horsepower than the regular Mark 8s. For my purpose, I went with a Cobra intake. I was able to buy a used one off of Facebook from somebody in a Cobra group. I think for the entire package I paid 300 bucks for the upper and lower. It was already polished and all that kind of stuff when I bought it. Now, this wire for the idle air control valve, because the idle air control valve is usually up here on a GT, will need to be routed around because the plug comes from that side on the GT. I did use the GT harness on mine. I just extended a few things. I also did keep, let me zoom out a little bit. I did keep coil wire, because again, I was going for the cheapest options I could think of as far as swap wise. Now, obviously I'm not done with this. I did do all this just to keep it to make sure everything would run and drive, and then I was going to go back in and clean everything back up eventually. So I'll probably do that in some of our videos to make it nicer. But the Mark 8 intake will work for you guys. You will have to get the braided fuel hose. They don't have to be braided, but I see a lot of people using the braided fuel hose that go from this side for the fuel rail connector that come across the intake over to here. You will need a throttle cable if you do run the Mark 8s. I think the V6 version Mustang throttle cables work for those. I ended up finding my throttle cable off of a wrecked Cobra. There is a company in Georgia that deals with wrecked Mustangs, and they have a ton of parts for these cars, and that's ultimately who I ended up going with. They were asking, I think, 150, and I sent them a message and said, hey, would you guys take $100? And they said, shipped, done. And that's super easy. It's literally just 2 bolts right there. You go into the back side of the throttle pedal, pull out, push up, you're done, and then it feeds in over here. This wire was another one that I had to extend. It's 3 wires. The alternator, you do have to cut this black and white wire. That's an internal diode, or that's a diode. The 4 valves do have an internal diode, so this wire is not necessary. The other ones that I had to extend, this is for the coolant. So you can see there the coolant sensor. And this one as well for the other coolant sensor. I had to extend those. I had to extend just a few inches, as you can see here, to cut. And then this part of the harness was, I had another GT harness laying around, so I tried to extend as little as humanly possible. So I mean, there's not much. This one is extended by a few inches, probably about like that far. The IAC one is extended by quite a bit. Like I said, it plugs in from this direction. Okay, as I was saying before my phone died because it's too hot here in Phoenix, the IAC plug comes in on this side, so I did have to extend it around, and I went around the back side to connect it over here. So that one I did have to extend quite a bit. This is not on the GTs, but this is the fresh air vent. It might look like a PCV, but it is not a PCV. Use fresh air only, so use a vent to a hose that can connect to this. I do have the On 3 one that you can use for the stock GT elbow, but I was able to get this local for extremely cheap off of, I think, Marketplace or OfferUp, one of the two. So I did go with that. This can stay the same. These are the only other ones. So this is a cut upper hose from a GT, so that will work. However, the lower hose and thermostat housing and all that stuff you will need to get again. When you have all this off, use the PI tube that goes to the heater core. I did not, and I ended up breaking my heater core tube, so that's a shame on me. However, I do have the MMR head crossover kit. So you take the freeze plugs out of the back side of the head, you install 2 like flanges basically that go to hoses that will keep the heads extremely cool on these. It's not 100% necessity, but where I'm located, it kind of is. EGR tube I was able to bend to fit. This normally has a bracket over here. I don't have that, and I don't have the tubes because, again, mine's off of a GT and it was mounted to a bracket that sat back here, but that will work. GT dipstick, you'll need the GT oil pan. Power steering pump, AC, all that stuff will fit. Motor mounts I used, I have the steel version for the 4.6 GT, but they mount right up. All the other mounts, or the grounds and everything, work. However, on Mark 8s and Cobras, the exhaust manifolds, I did have long tubes on here, but I hit everything, so I took them off and swapped out the stock manifolds. For the stock manifolds, try and look for Mach 1s, because they do not have smog port holes in them that you would have to plug up, because this does not have a smog port and this doesn't have a smog pump, or the secondary air injection pump. So if you get the Mach ones, they don't have those provisions in the mounts, or I mean in the manifolds, so they'll bolt right up and you don't have to worry about leaking exhaust at all. Other than that, the swap is pretty straightforward. You will have to swap the cam sensor out. They're different from GT to Mark 8, and also the oil pressure sending unit is also different from Mark 8 to GT. The cool thing about this swap is I have $600 into the engine, not including the intake setup. So I have $600 into that, about $2,300 into the car itself. So it's a very, 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 very budget friendly swap. The only issue I have is, you can see my fuel rail is zip tied together because I wanted the fuel rail from a Cobra. I couldn't find it anywhere. So I used the Mark 8 one, and the guy that sold me this had a chopped up 96 GT that I ended up drilling holes into the mounting tabs. I don't know if you can see it very well, but I drilled a hole into the mounting tab and then wrapped a zip tie around. I was able to find a Cobra fuel rail, so I will be adding that on, and we'll do that in a video. And then also I have to remove the front cover and replace the timing chain tensioners because this one is making noise, so we'll do that in a video as well. The GT transmission mounts up, the flywheel mounts up. You'll have to put a pilot bushing in, and the clutch mounts up fine. So all of that stuff is reusable. So all that stuff I used off of my GT. So this is a very budget friendly 285, 290 horsepower engine, and it's definitely noticeable the difference that it makes from a stock GT. So if you're looking for a budget friendly, more horsepower swap, I mean, for what, basically less than $1,000, this is unbeatable. So all right, let's start it up, and I'll give you a couple of I'll give you a cold start and then a couple of quick revs. Okay, hang on one second. Runs pretty smooth. So, all in all, there is a very budget-friendly swap. You will have to get an SCT tuner or have it tuned to turn off the... Actually, you won't have to turn it off, but you'll have to have it tuned to a Cobra. So I got an SCT and I tuned it as a Cobra, and it started to run right. If you have it tuned as, or you leave it as a stock GT tune, it will keep giving you too much air codes. So in order for you to turn that off, you will have to tune it as a Cobra. The other thing that I was never aware of, this has IMRCs, so intake manifold runner control valves. They're plastic blocks that run the entire length of the engine, right, of the intake. And you can see here that there's a bracket where a cable goes down and hooks to a butterfly valve. Well, there's a tab that sticks out of the bracket about right here, which once we take this off, I'll show you in another video. But that tab sticks out. You can twist that all the way back and bend that tab up, and it will lock that into place. So it'll keep the IMRCs open at all times. Huge money saving if you're on a budget and you want it to bring in as much air as possible rather than keeping them shut. Because the IMRC delete plates, if they're available, they're about $300. So another budget-friendly way. They do tend to crack and leak over time because they are plastic, but I haven't leaked yet, knock on wood, so that's one way. Let's get into my Capri. I haven't seen one of these, or I haven't seen a stock-ish form one of these on YouTube at all. So I kind of want to get into this, but this car is going to be listed for sale soon. So I hate to see it go, but I need a truck, and out here I need AC, and this car's AC stuff's been deleted. So let's get into that real quick. Okay, again, sorry that the car is dirty. It has rained. I do need to take it to the car wash, but I'm in the middle of doing a fuel pump to it, which I probably will film the process of putting back together because I decided to start doing this in the middle of that. So let's take a look around it real quick. So the paint is older. It was done by somebody that is newly starting out. It was done by the previous owner, but it is an RS turbo. There were roughly 1,100, maybe 1,200 of these made. There's a fuel tank sitting on the ground in 84. That is the last year. It is not an SVO that was badged by somebody previously. The Capri is basically it is a Fox platform, other than these wider fender, or the wider looking fender flares. These were different. This bubble glass was different from the Mustang. These taillights and rear bumper were different, and so was the front bumper and hood. Other noticeable differences: this was newer on my car, but an Altima lost a mirror on the highway and broke one of the most expensive parts on this entire car. These moldings are very expensive, so if you are looking for a Capri and you find one with all of these moldings intact, I've got to re-secure that one, as you can see, then that's a huge bonus, because if you can find these, they're about 250 bucks a piece. Let's pop the hood. Okay, again, this will be detailed. Obviously it's been sitting for quite a while. It's got a larger vane air meter from an SVO. It's got an upgraded turbo with a center mount header. I do have an intercooler, I just have not had a chance to put it on. I just put a new distributor in. Right there's the distributor. Upgraded fuel pressure regulator. And then you can see there's green top or green injectors. Those are aftermarket. Stock fan, larger radiator. Other than that, you can turn the boost pressure up on these with that little dial right there. Make around 20 psi. I think they're good for about 300 to 350-ish horsepower. Sorry for that. What else do I've got? I've got an SVO computer. These come factory at 345 rear gears. I do believe it is a 7.5 rear end, so they're not very big, but I mean, it does just fine. They're all manuals. These injectors, I think, are 45 pound per hour, which is plenty enough for what we're doing with it. It does have a 3-inch downpipe, as you can tell, and an external wastegate. Right there is where the AC compressor would have lived. It does have a small alternator. All of this stuff will be clean, and we'll go through that in the next video, because under this has been polished before, so I'm pretty sure I can get that to come back. I'd like to find a timing belt cover for this, just to make sure it's in time 100%. But we'll have a 340 LPH fuel pump, which is plenty for the injectors that it has. So I mean, we should be putting down pretty decent amount of power. It's a pretty clean car. This one does have a sunroof that was an aftermarket dealer install. And then the dash pad on all of these crack in the sun. So that's something we got to work on. But other than that, let's take a look inside. It does need cleaned. Obviously, it's been sitting outside. It's only got 68,000 original miles. So again, it's just a really, really fun car that you do not see a ton of them. There were GTs of the same model. They were the GT Turbo. This is the RS Turbo. The GT Turbos, I do believe there were less of those made than the Capri, but the Capri just looks so good. Just that front bumper, that hood, that body line. Also, there's a pace car sneaking out back there, so we'll get into that one later on too when we got some fun stuff planned for that one. But as soon as I get the fuel pump in, I'll probably film the last process of that. We'll put some fuel in it and we'll fire it up and take it for a test drive as well. If you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I will help you as much as humanly possible. I do also have some spare parts that I do not mind letting go for Mustang people, obviously. The ultimate goal with the green car is to turbocharge it or supercharge it. So if this video can garner enough information or I mean attention and likes, comments, then we'll be turbocharging it on this channel. So I'm hoping to do that. But as for next time, I'm Zach. Thanks for tuning in.